We are live on air, ladies and gentlemen. Those on African continent, I'm sure it's an evening. Those who are in Europe, I'm sure it's in the afternoon, about 5 p.m. Those who are in the US, I am sure running morning or maybe coming to midday. We salute all of you. We wish you a nice Merry Christmas as we still go through this event. Tonight, we have a guest, and I'm here to introduce him. As you may be aware, that we have put up this platform majorly to serve the purpose of mentoring young people, business people, and also for trying to make sure that we have relevant information that we need to make the change that we want to see. I am happy that for a number of weeks we have had quite a class of distinguished guests from Europe. We've also had one Kenyan, actually two Kenyans, the head of Nairobi International School, and then we've had a student from China. And I'm happy that from Uganda, we have one of our own, Dennis Matanda. Tonight, we shall start by trying to get from Dennis, who is Dennis? We shall try to get the introduction for him to give us, to be able to give us his background. Where did he go to school? We want to know some little about him before we delve into the details. I welcome you once again. I thank you all. I thank all the members who are already online. I am happy that from Tanzania, I can see Dr. Ibambasi and Mr. Sitia Elias. Thank you so much for being already online. Welcome and enjoy the show tonight. So, Dennis, so happy to see you today. I think it's...
Well, the pleasure is mine. It's been ages.
Right.
Since I last saw you.
No, I am happy that we are able to come live on this show and interact with you. I'm sure that for some few people that I talked to about this show, once they heard that, you know, it's Dennis, they said they will certainly be on this platform. So there are quite a number of people who are excited to listen to you tonight. And I told them that they will not fail to get what they want to get out of this, because I know the caliber of person you are. So, Dennis, could you briefly just introduce yourself for the viewers to be able to understand who you are? You can still go through your background. Don't forget to mention Damasagali somewhere, and give us the chronology up to your PhD, because I know that you have a PhD, I think, in political science. Can you give us that academic journey, and then give us the work experience journey, so that we can just have a rough idea of the type of person we are talking to tonight?
I want to try and be as relevant as possible, because I want to thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this journey of mentoring young people, of providing some sort of avenue that we can say there is an alternative. It's not just a simple package of being Ugandan or being African, and that there is only one path. I went to 4 very important schools. The first school that I went to was North Road Primary School in Mbale. The second school I went to was Victoria Niles Primary School in Jinja. Then I went to Namasagali College, and then I went to Makerere in Kampala. And then I did another degree at Makerere. I was in the pioneer class for international relations. But let me just go back to what I think is the most profound thing throughout all these years of being an academic and being a student and being a person that's on the receiving end of advice and guidance. What's interesting is that when I look back to my first day in nursery school, I remember these things. This was 1979, 1980, 1981. I think that nothing has changed between that person and the person that I am today. The ideas are still the same. The way of engaging people is exactly the same. And I'm basically saying that the fundamental or the baseline individual does not change. What changes is the sort of people that you surround yourself with. So let me talk about why I brought up people. The most and the biggest influences in my life from North Road Primary School was a friend who I was friends with for 40 years. His name was Gerald Demoy. He actually passed away. He called himself Jerry Komagum, but we knew him as Gerald Demoy. I met him in Victorian in North Road Primary School. Moved to Jinja. He still was my friend, and in Jinja, I met again some remarkable people that I'm still friends with to this very day. We actually stick to the same WhatsApp group: Ezekiel Tuma, Edgar Biama, Harry Kurup, Peter Kakaire. There's just so many powerful individuals. Rebecca Lubiai, my lovely cousin and twin, Linda Lukandwa, Ronan Nyakurama. I mean, these are people that I was with from P3 in Victoria Nile Primary School until P7, and then I went to Namasagali. Namasagali was a whole can of worms.
No, actually, the whole brigade missed you yesterday.
Enough about yes, but I was online. I could see you guys. It was a great occasion. So I want to say that Namasagali was, and when I say a whole can of worms, if I was to explain Namasagali to myself, I will say that it was the thing that completely solidified the person I wanted to be in my life. Because from a very, very early age, we were given opportunities to serve either in the civil service or in the prefecture, or which is basically the reeves or prefects, or the judiciary system. I mean, for me, those are the things that I aspired to be. Then I went to Makerere University in 1993, 1994. And for me, that's, again, another whole world, because then I discovered the importance of extracurricular activities. But I bring up Makerere to say my swimming was very important because I also had a swimming scholarship to Makerere. But what I also discovered is originally I went to school for music, dance, and drama. I went to Makerere for music, dance, and drama. But along the way, I discovered political science just by chance. I just happened to go to the main hall and I listened to the professor. It was Professor Biarugaba, who is a very good friend's father, and he passed away. But Professor Biarugaba was talking about political science, Aristotle, Plato, and I just thought, this is exactly where I want to be. And I stuck in that class, and I came top of my class. I got a first-class degree after my first year, and then after my first undergrad, then I joined the first master's program of international relations and diplomatic studies. I was in the pioneer class. I don't think I did very well with that one, but that's another story. Then I dabbled in this executive MBA, and then I went to the United States to study American politics. Hold on, Harper, I'm on the phone. Go ask your mom. I'm on the phone. I'm on a video call. So I then ultimately ended up doing American politics because I found there was a new phenomenon called the Tea Party movement. The Tea Party movement was fantastic. And so I'm happy to say I'm one of the few experts on the Republican Party, but not just the Republican Party, the understanding of populist movements around the world. Okay. So I finished that particular degree, and then I enrolled back to do another PhD in international business, and that's what I will talk about eventually when we talk about our professional lives.
Okay. Wow. That's a great CV indeed, and I want to thank you for persistence and resilience, for that matter, because that needs real character. Okay, no doubt that you have been able to do what you have done at this age. So we really want to congratulate you. I may not say on behalf of the president, but on behalf of the young people in this country, Uganda. So thank you so much. So,
well, we have to thank the president. President Museveni did an amazing job for us. With all due respect, he did an amazing job for us.
Did you go through UPE?
Of course not. But you see, I had a scholarship to my career. Let's agree. And that was university.
That's okay. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Okay. So, Dennis, thank you for that very good intro. As you may be aware that with the theme of today, we're trying to look how we can be able to, first of all, penetrate different opportunities around the globe. Last week we just had a number of investors from Europe, and we are literally trying to make these type of platforms to be easily accessible to people who want to search for information. For example, this video that we are going to have, we shall be running it over time. We shall be taking it through different media just for people to be able to follow what we're talking about today, and they could learn one or two things about how they can make entries in the United States of America. So we are interested at some particular point for you to dive into what you're doing with your company and to dive into the opportunities that you have seen in the US continent, so that we could be able to see what we could be able, we can see what we can tap into that other side. Because I know that you've talked about investments, you've talked about human rights, I think. Yeah, so we're still interested in diving in that area. But before we go into that, we would like to get you because you were the first African, okay, to head the subcommittee on, I think it was some subcommittee on human rights, some subcommittee, I think, on investments in the US House of Representatives. What can you tell us in 2 minutes about that experience, or what does it involve? What was that job about?
So let me just very, very clear. It was the staff director of the House Foreign Affairs Committee on Africa, Global Human Rights, and Global Health. The job is one of the most influential positions in US policy for Africa. The reason why it's very influential is because policy for Africa is not necessarily written by Africans. It is written by very, very passionate Americans. And it's very important for us to understand that there is something called agency. Agency is the capacity for the people, the principals themselves, to support the thing that they need to achieve. Being an African on that committee, in my opinion, was very good because I'm able to provide, or I was able to provide, additional context for particular things. Let me now quickly say that one of the most difficult things about being an African in the United States, or being an African in positions of authority, is that Africans are still very, very misunderstood. There is also the continued low expectations. I don't want to say it's an underestimation, but there is something called an information asymmetry. They and people abroad do not know enough about us to invest in our opportunities. I guess that's the best way to put it. And I will be able to say that I hope this is a 2-minute summary that can allow us to talk about other things.
Okay. Okay, that's great. So that's from the U.S. House of Representatives. You are currently the CEO. I find that name very difficult. You're currently the CEO
it's pronounced
of a company.
Morgenthau Stirling.
Morgenthau Stirling.
Morgenthau Stirling.
Is there? Would you briefly be able to tell us what this company does?
I'm very glad that you asked that question. And so I'm very lucky that the people I work with and the company that we established together is addressing those very, very deep challenges that the African countries go through. But let me start from a purely academic and practical perspective. Foreign direct investment is the most effective way to generate development in frontier markets or emerging markets like those in Africa, developing countries like Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, the Democratic Republic of Congo, South Sudan. I'm only focusing on the East African community for the moment, but there is ECOWAS, COMESA, IGAD, and SACU, SADC, and all that. The point I'm trying to make is that foreign direct investment plays a great, great role. However, the world only infuses less than 5% of its total investments into these lucrative markets. Africa, we walk around saying, oh my God, we are so rich in our country, in our continent, we have all these opportunities, but the world only proves that they would like to only invest or infuse only 5% or less than 5%. Now let's come to the United States. The United States is performing at such a bad level, which is, if you look at between 2000 and 2020, the largest amount of money that the United States has invested around 221 territories, regions, countries around the world is $6.15 trillion the past 20 years. And, you know, American investment is called United States direct investment abroad. There's a very big difference between portfolio investment, whereby people say, oh, we are going to put money in bonds, stocks. Direct investment, foreign direct investment, we have to define it as where somebody comes from a country abroad and takes 10%, 15% in either an ongoing business or a new business. And plans to do it for longer than 15 years. So foreign direct investment is long term. Now, somebody might say, well, what about overseas development assistance? Overseas development assistance, foreign aid is great, but overseas development assistance was never meant to generate foreign direct investment. It was basically meant to promote the foreign policy of the country that was sending out its foreign aid. The other side to it is we have to ask, well, does remittances, I mean, in the past 5 years or 20 years, if I was to say, the amount of remittances from our Africans in the diaspora surpasses the amount of foreign direct investment that the Chinese put into all 55 countries in Africa. So the question is, well, why can't remittances generate development? With all due respect to people that provide money, it's not necessarily a developmental product, but it's not developmental because the African countries or countries like Uganda don't have the kind of facilities that can allow that money to trickle down and generate real development. When we talk about development, what do we mean? We talk about institutional development. Okay. For example, if I had $1 million, where can I take it? Secondly, if I had $50 million, can I put it in a country like Uganda and then generate the sorts of employment? Again, you have challenges, and those challenges are not the fault of either the foreign direct investment, the foreign aid, or the remittances. It is the infrastructure, both soft and hard, issues in the African countries. Now, let me dial it back and go back to the heart of the matter. Morgenthau Stirling set out to achieve those things.
Before you just leave that point, you are mentioning a very important point. You are saying resources are available, but you're saying
yes,
the infrastructural setup on the African continent cannot allow the absorption of those resources. Is that what you're saying?
I'm also saying it is not just a matter of absorption. I mean, look, we could bring $50 million and let it get into the country. people can steal the money. I mean, I don't know if you remember in 2004, 2005, 2006, the Global Fund had lots and lots of money, and people failed to account for this money because the money couldn't go anywhere. I mean, there was only so much you could do. But that is not the point. The point is that if we had a significant number of advertising agencies, for example, if we had a significant number of hospitals, private and public, there is a very big chance that we would have been able to spend that global fund even better and giving people less of a chance to actually take the money. I'm basically coming to the point and to say that unless a country has a functional infrastructure, unless a country has the institutional development, unless a country has the absorption capacity, even if I gave you $1 billion, there is nothing that you can do with that money. The best example I can give you is a country like China. China has over 1.3 billion people. And until 1979, those 1.3 billion people were very, very, very underutilized. The one thing that the Chinese did, and the things that the Africans should learn, is something called total factor productivity. In other words, if you have labor, if you have all these young people that are available, over 50% of Uganda's population is below the age of 20. Can you put them to work? And if you put them to work, can they increase the country's gross domestic product? China was able to improve its total factor productivity between 1979 and the year 2020. What that means is that we as Africans, we as Ugandans, Kenyans, Tanzanians, Africans around the continent have a great opportunity to almost readjust, to channel foreign direct investment into functional entities. There is a very simple example. The first foreign direct investment project in China between 1949 and 1979, a period of almost 40 years, was from Hong Kong. That investment spurred significant investments throughout this great country, the Middle Kingdom. I think Africa can actually emulate that sort of thing, which is foreign direct investment, productive capacity, total factor productivity, and then economic development.
Okay. Wow. Those are very serious economic points. I'm not an economist myself, but I've had to learn due to the harsh conditions, I've had to learn. There's something that I want you to explain, but I just want to put it to you, and I'll be able to read some comments of members who are online. What I want to know from you, because when we talk about infrastructure, we're ideally looking to a significant level to be a role that can be played by government. We are interested, for example, in Uganda, where you come from, you know that we have poverty alleviation programs. These days we talk about the parish model, we talk about SACCOs, we talk about, so many other initiatives that are in place to help people fight poverty. Do you think that these efforts can really release Africa to do the work it's supposed to do to make sure that we can have economic progress? I want you just to think about that as I make the comments, then immediately...
I don't even have to think about it. Okay. Absolutely. So please go ahead, make the comments. I am very encouraged by what's happening in Uganda. I'm very encouraged by what is happening in any of the African countries. And I'll tell you in very simple terms, the fact that the governments are increasing their infrastructure spending on both soft and hard infrastructure is a very significant amount of progress. But again, please go ahead, ask the question. I wanted to simply say yes.
Fine. I just wanted to acknowledge people online. We have Nifeth Obonyo, right from Nairobi. Thank you very much for being online and tuning on. We have Tony Ofunji, who is live. That is an Amasagali OB. And I think the reason they are tuned in, it's because Dennis here is an Amasagali OB. The host, myself, I'm also an Amasagali OB. So I'm sure partly that's the reason why they're online. I can see Mr. Godfrey Viamfisi from Mayuge. Sebo, thank you so much. Mr. Sita Elias, he says, finally, I've managed to attend into the fruitful session. Sita Elias from Mwanza, Tanzania. Thank you so much. I can see Mr. Mugabe Dan. Thanks for the show, comrades. Duke Garage. King Remis, I like the show. Jojo, saying joining you. Coach Phil, great to see you, Dennis, being the force that you ought to be. Thank you. Pastor Boniface Luther from Winners Chapel, Kampala. We thank you for being online. And none other than, I don't know if this is our Maureen. Maureen Mwangale. I'm also here. Maureen Mwangale na Masagali. I think, is she our Maureen? Dennis, I suppose.
Maureen and Coach Phil are brother and sister, and they are some of the most influential people I've known in my whole life. Philip was probably one of my earliest best friends. So yes, I've known this.
Oh, okay. Just off the show, she did fantastic strokes on the in our reunion yesterday. She did a very nice job. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's a good lady. Yeah. Then Taffy Asante, my daughter. Thank you so much. And then Daniel Musana, great to hear from you guys. Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to appreciate the people online. Now, could you, Dennis, you know we have some other listeners who need to break down the language. I can hear you well in terms of those, in terms of the economic factors that you're explaining. Could you just go back, because you are saying that, oh, Uganda is doing fantastic, and we have heard from people here. We've had a lot of problems where people are thinking that Uganda is almost collapsing, it's almost doing nothing. Now I'm listening to somebody who has been in the details of the investments that are being done home, infrastructure development that are being done in Uganda. Maybe could you just be able to break deeper into that? Because sometimes we have people who talk so many things because of lack of information. So I just wanted you to go. So
let me help break this down. Uganda is, as of the 2015 survey, Uganda is the world's most entrepreneurial country. Let me put it this way again. Uganda is the world's most entrepreneurial country. Uganda beats the next country, Philippines and the Thailand, by 2. In other words, what does it mean to be entrepreneurial? Ugandan adults, Ugandans have opened up a business in the past 2-3 years, maintained it for the past 2-3 years, paid salaries for the past 2-3 years. Now, why do businesses in Uganda collapse? Sometimes it's a very deliberate thing. It's that the cost of running a business, you cannot run a business you cannot run an efficient business whereby you have borrowed money from a bank or from a loan shark and they're giving you interest rates of up to 20 to 30%. That is a condition of the enabling environment. That's one of the things we at Morgenthau Stirling are working to prevent. The other side to it, let's talk about this entrepreneurship. There is a very, very big project in Uganda called the Kira Bus Service that is doing electric buses. Now, I understand one of the challenges, it is, a government project, it might be a private sector project, or whatever it is. It's the fact that we as Ugandans are focusing on our small borders, forgetting that Uganda is part of what they call a customs union, the East African community. I understand that Kenya has banned our milk and Tanzania has a few issues. There are a few issues at the border with Rwanda. But at no time does the customs union prevent us from doing business with Rwanda. What happens in these political moves are those are what they call non-tariff barriers or non-technical barriers to trade. Now, those are things that we can resolve very simply politically. For example, the president of Uganda, the president of Rwanda can wake up having a very good dream and say, you know what, we are brothers, let us open the borders. And it will happen in 5 seconds. That is a non-technical, non-tariff barrier to regional integration. The reason I bring this up is that Kira Bus Services should not be providing its buses for just Uganda. Uganda is too small a market to actually absorb even 100 buses. Mm-hmm. Guess what? That bus manufacturer has capacity for 1,000 buses a month. 1,000 buses a month. If you did 1,000 buses a month, where would you take them? Guess what? South Sudan has roads that could take these buses. South Sudan could order 200 buses. Kenya could order 300 buses. Burundi could order 400 buses. I bring this up because these are part of what they call the customs union. A customs union makes trade between neighbors or people within the same place easier. The other part is that not only are these countries part of a customs union, they are also part of an even bigger entity called COMESA, the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, whereby you could sell the buses to Zambia under the free trade area. Yes, the taxes might be for this finished product, could be maybe 22% or even 10%, 15%. But if you went to Zambia and got some inputs like copper, because copper, cobalt, electric buses, those are inputs. It means you can actually export those buses as a finished product, which means you could actually buy copper. Yes, I know we have our own copper in Kilembe, but you could buy copper from Zambia cheaper, bring it into Uganda, and get the Zambians to buy the buses in exchange for their raw material. The benefit for Uganda is that a finished bus is more expensive than a ton of iron ore, copper ore. Ultimately, we as Morgenthau Stirling are trying to encourage countries like Uganda to try and make them see that you are sitting on incredible potential. But the last point to this, and this is why I got into this business, it is scaling up, where it doesn't matter how much money the government of Uganda has. It doesn't have more money than the markets abroad. The global financial markets, the United States alone, the private sector markets alone in 2021 raised close to $800 billion just for the American market. Private equity and venture capital. Where do you think that money is going to go? It's probably going to stay in the United States. But if the United States invests most of its money in Europe, 70% of America's money goes into Europe. That 30% goes sometimes to China, to Singapore, to the Bahamas, to Australia. Why can't we increase that amount of money by getting at least $500 million into Uganda? That $500 million into Uganda will increase Uganda's partnership in the world exponentially. I'm trying to say that the potential is sitting there. The onus is on Uganda to do the hard work. I don't know if I'm making it clear, but we can even talk about it from the agriculture perspective. We can talk about it from coffee. I don't know if you've realized, but the Italians have begun to buy Uganda's coffee. That potential was there in 1964. What has changed? It is the structures, the institutions that have changed. And that is what Uganda has in plenty. The last part of the matter is if you go around Uganda, there has been a significant change that many people may not have seen. It is corporate governance. There are boards of directors. People are celebrating boards. The reason boards are most important to foreign direct investment, especially for a country like Uganda, it is very simple. The most important non-financial factor for foreign direct investment in developing countries is corporate governance. And let me give you a very simple example. Evans, if you, for example, opened up a company and you invited 10 guys from Namasagali and said, guys, I know very well, I've had this company for 5 years. However, I would like to open it up to you guys to get some guidance. That is going to help your company, Evans, much more than you think. Because I'm going to borrow an adage I saw on a billboard in Uganda in 2005. Power is nothing without control. You might have the most brilliant idea, but having people that can support you, having people that can tell you, Evans, you know, you're full of crap. Having people that can actually guide you is the most important thing you need. And especially for us as developing countries, having a group of people, eminent persons, or even if they're not eminent persons, even if they're people you went to school with, if they can stand up and say, you know what, Evans, we know very well you took some money out here and spent, and then Evans, you could say, you know what, yes, I did, but my family was sick at the time. Says, well, next time you do this, we will put a procedure. That money will come out of the director's expenditure. That's the sort of infrastructure you need. I'm basically saying young people need to do something. They come from the world's most entrepreneurial country. They need to just get that power and prepare themselves for investment. If you want to attract investment, people need to see how many other people think that you have a good product, that you're a good manager, and that there is a chance for us to make money by putting money into your business. This is how you reduce the cost of borrowing from 20%, 30% to about 15%, 8%. Ultimately, Uganda is sitting on this great potential. Fortunately for us, it's not just Uganda. Ethiopia is sitting on this potential. Burundi is sitting on this potential. Zambia is in the same situation. Lesotho. Let's go to West Africa. Benin, Burkina Faso, Senegal. I can talk about Gambia, where I lived, and Sierra Leone, where I lived. There are so many opportunities available, and we shouldn't actually play around with it, because there's something called the African Continental Free Trade Area that I can talk about later.
Okay. Thank you very much for that elaborate explanation. You raise very important, critical points. But I want us to point those, we want to point those inefficiencies or the challenges we are talking about, either to the private sector or to the government, because it appears from what you're explaining that it's ideally the inability of the people who are supposed to put in the infrastructures, people who are supposed to put an environment, an enabling environment for maybe people to do their businesses. Yeah? Mm-hmm. But I'm interested, we have so many of these entrepreneurs who are coming up and they are saying, we're trying to do our level best to be able to help change our country. How do you think the private sector, without the government, could be able to help in this area? The private sector.
The government of Uganda, just like other governments, has done a great job in investing in regional financial services. Let me give you a simple example. The government of Uganda is a shareholder in something called the Africa Trade Insurance Agency. It has over 6% shares, 5 or something, 6% shares. And that is significant, which means if any business person wants to do business with somebody in Guangzhou, and they need some sort of letter of credit or some sort of reassurance that if they buy goods from Guangzhou, they will be able to get their goods, they can go to the Africa Trade Insurance. Uganda is a shareholder. Uganda is also a shareholder in the East and Southern African Trade and Development Bank, TDB, which used to be the PTA Bank. These institutions have significant amounts of money, but there's not enough people getting money from this company. TDB alone is $7.7 billion in total assets. What does that mean? It means that there are people who would like to give you this money, but you have to qualify for it. The government of Uganda has not sat down, not doing anything. There are some really, really smart people that want the best for Uganda. Say what you will, it's a very same thing. I mean, let's agree on something. When you look at people who apply for government jobs in Africa, there are 1,500 people who apply, for example, commissioner of something. By the time they get the best person, those people want the best for their country. It doesn't matter that many of them go abroad, they make money from all these trips, they still want the best. And they have been smart enough to make decisions whereby we will join with all these regional economic communities, we will join with these regional development banks. And all I can say is that a bank like TDB will not give you money if you don't have a track record of 3 years, if you don't have a track record of a board of governors. That's the sort of thing I'm talking about. Again, power is nothing without control. The control is you need to give people like us who might have money to invest in your business the reassurance that when we come and check the books, the money will be there. Okay. That's investment 101. But the government of Uganda has done its best. What needs to happen is that the government of Uganda needs to almost improve the way it attracts investment. Unfortunately, these government bureaucrats might not be expert like you and me, Evans, at communication. Maybe we don't speak the language. Maybe when a person comes and says, they're speaking to investors and they're thinking, I've watched one of our ministers. She has a great presentation. She wants to talk and she's making a point. And she's saying, you people come and invest in Uganda. We are great at this and we are that. And the people sitting next to me are saying, what the hell is she saying? And why is she yelling at us? It's that simple. Do you get what I'm saying? It's that simple. Right. Because this woman is a minister. She is a great communicator. In Uganda, we say she is very convincing. But when we're sitting amongst, I was in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt a few months ago. This person was great to her. To us, we were thinking, I have a headache. I'm not listening to this stuff anymore. Right. I am not going to Uganda. It's at that level. So
and somebody is making an instant decision just based on how somebody is making the presentation.
Oh yeah. It's that simple. It doesn't mean Uganda is wrong. It means we just need to tweak those simple things.
Okay. Wow. That's great. Let me just read some. Who is HD? I don't know who is HD. HD says that those are very insightful talks. Thank you, Dennis. Of course, me, I'm not talking. Tony Ofunji says, we would like to see people of color get into partnership with Africa in tourism, hospitality, agriculture, startups. He's mentioning startups, Dennis. We have the great source of the Nile, straddled by the greater... I don't know whether it means straddled by the greater Namasagali College. But the whole idea, I think Tono Funji is talking about startups. And I think this is where I wanted to get your perspective. Uganda, let me take, let me use Uganda as a case. In Uganda, we're talking about people who are in the formal business sector. We're talking, we have about 1.6 million. 1.6 million. Uganda population is over 42 million people. The purchasing capacity, the questions that come with the purchasing capacity in this country. Now my question comes, the world systems look like they're dealing with stability, they're dealing with people who are organized, they're dealing with people who have a track record. My question comes, where do we get these track records in the type of economy we are in? Because ideally, most of the people are running businesses, informally. But we're trying to help.
You know what's very funny? Very funny? It's that we always think that there are no ways of knowing that Uganda has a solid track record. Let me tell you something. If I wanted information on Uganda's governance infrastructure, from corruption, political stability, government regulatory equality, whatever it is I wanted, I can find it. There is plenty of information because statistics do not lie. Incidences do not lie. It's easy for us to tell that Uganda is doing like this, like that, like that. It's not very difficult. There are indices, for example, a very, very powerful indice that I would like to encourage people to look at. It's called the Index of Economic Freedom. It will give you snapshots of how Uganda's commercial law works, how Uganda resolves commercial disputes, as an example. It's in plenty. Very thorough, very well researched, because there are Ugandans who are sitting there providing this information, and it's very solid. Look at the Economists Intelligence Unit, EIU. Comprehensive. It will give you information that you will be amazed about. I can give you information. The people at the Trade and Development Bank in Nairobi are not sleeping. They know what's happening in Uganda. The people at the Africa Trade Insurance are not sleeping. They have this information. In fact, what shocks me is that Uganda Investment Authority sometimes has information that is 2 years, 3 years old, and people who in Nairobi, people in Washington, D.C., people everywhere have information that is 2021, December the 14th. If you don't believe me, go to something called the International Trade Association. Information is key. It is in plenty. So we shouldn't sit there thinking people don't know about us. But I think we need to deal with a real problem. Let's talk about the source of the Nile that Mr. Ofunji was talking about. The source of the Nile is beautiful. It is remarkable. I grew up opposite the source of the Nile. I learned how to swim in the source of the Nile, and I think it's great. It's phenomenal. The challenge is, how easy is it for me to get from my house in Princeton, New Jersey, or Robbinsville, New Jersey, to Uganda? It's going to take me over 26 hours to get there. And it's probably going to be me going, flying to Paris, or flying to London, or flying to Dusseldorf, or flying to Frankfurt, or flying to Switzerland. That actually is the shortest flight. Zurich Air or Swiss Air is the shortest. I fly 7 hours to Zurich or whatever one of those capitals, and then 7 hours to Nairobi, and then 45 or 1 hour to Uganda. There's a little break at the airport. In my opinion, if we want to promote Uganda Airlines, or sorry, not Uganda, if we want to promote the source of the Nile, we have to think about it backwards, not from the fact that, oh, we have this beautiful thing. We have to ask. We have the river, we have the source of the Nile. Is the road to the source of the Nile from Kampala beautiful? What impression shall we give to people who pass through Namawojolo? Oh, great. The chicken is great. It tastes fantastic. Chicken on sticks, people going around with this. If I touch it and taste it, it's going to melt on my tongue. That's great. But if it takes me 26 hours to get there, do I still want to go there? There is a country that draws tourists, and yet it doesn't have anything much, the Gambia. If you want to see what tourists really mean, Gambia is a very small country. It is 94% surrounded by Senegal. But Gambia attracts some of the world's largest number of tourists to the African continent because they have presented themselves as a tourist destination. There are flights that come directly from Europe to Banjul. Can we say the same thing about the Entebbe? Do we have direct flights? Can it be very easy for me to get there? This is why Tanzania and Kenya attract more tourists than we do. This is why Ethiopian Airlines is very, very important for the continent. The other side to this discussion is
Dennis, sorry,
yes.
Sorry for the interruption. You
No
just
problem.
talked about the 26 hours and the way Gambia is doing a wonderful job. But I think from the statistics that we have, not necessarily statistics, but the data we have, we've seen Uganda being proclaimed to be one of the best tourist destinations. I think that was as of last year.
Yes.
It was voted.
Yes, it is.
So I'm wondering what is not being done to tap into this. You understand what I mean? I think that's where the concerns of the Ofunjis are coming from, because you're seeing the potential of tourism, and you are actually trying to start initiatives in that direction. But then now we get the type of data you're talking of today. Then it still appears that there is still a problem from the people who are supposed to put up the facilities.
Let me just tell you how much of a problem it is. Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, Nigeria, by 2035 will have some of the world's largest populations and young people with labor. Why is it that the world is not investing in this? Why are African countries still drawing less than 3% of total investment? Why does Uganda only have a total of $46 million of American investment in the past 20 years? Which basically means divide 46 by 20. How much do you think has been coming to Uganda every single year from the United States? And this is the world's biggest investor. In my opinion, it's not the fault of the Americans. The money is there. The opportunity is there for Uganda or for African countries to make the change. Tanzania has just done something fantastic, given people a royal tour. The president is doing a royal tour. I'm not saying Uganda should do the same thing, but what that does is it changes the information asymmetry. It allows people to see that Tanzania has opportunities for tourism. There have been movies done about Tanzania's tourism, Kenya's tourism, and Uganda, the last king of Scotland, 8 days at Entebbe, that sort of thing. I'm not saying it's negative. I'm just saying that I'm not so sure that I want to go there. But the point I was going to make is something that personally happened to me. I landed at the airport a few weeks ago, actually, and I had to go through what I can assure you was horrific, even for me as a Ugandan. People asking me, where have you paid? Give me a receipt. It's on paper. During COVID, I'm trying to avoid touching people. And somebody's asking me, this is your receipt. And yet I have already paid digitally. And they are giving me a paper receipt. And then I walk into this back room with this woman that's sitting there with a cask with almost nothing. And she takes my thing, my COVID thing, and she says, we will send the results in a few hours. Those results never came. Do you think I want to come back to Uganda? And I am Uganda. It's that sort of thing that we underestimate on a regular basis. Yeah. Now, do I love coming home? Absolutely. I want to kiss the ground every time I come home. But it doesn't mean that other people will not completely say, no, not coming back here again. That's my point.
Okay. Wow. Okay, you would allow me read comments from our chairman, your boss, Mr. Becca Magunda. We thank you for being online. But this is what he says. Genuine African investors struggle to access capital due to the seemingly impenetrable paperwork processes. What else must be done to make it easier? I think after listening from you, he's having hope on one side that we can do something, but again, he's seeing that there are some stumbling blocks which become a problem for one to be able to engage. As you think to go through that answer, Sita Elias says, to my theory, these developed countries, it's not true they don't see the potential in investing in Africa. But since they know we are in need, they just push us to the corner through our leaders. And maybe he has some truth in this. Maybe he doesn't.
I disagree completely. Completely disagree. Completely disagree.
Just before you answer that, I want to alert our viewers that we are in the last hours of summarizing this show. I would allow Dennis to respond to the 2 questions, and if you have more questions, please send them in, because next I will be asking him to make some summary points, and we want to get from this talk, what can we do from this talk, so that next time if somebody, for people who are going to watch this video, will be able to know that, okay, we have talked, this is what we are able to do. Whatever small that we can start on, we want to use those linkages. So Dafin Nyakatura says, yes, the information is available, but how can that information be used profitably for Uganda's economy, i.e. trade information? So please respond to those 3. And then I think after that, you could come up with some summary points of what you really think you want to hit last.
I want to, these points are so very, very timely. Ms. Nyakatura's, Mr. Magunda's, and Mr. Seta's. But let me start with Mr. Seta's. Many of us as Africans think there's a certain conspiracy theory, and that the Western world relegates us to second best, third best, and that we don't really have any power. But I want you to put yourselves in our shoes. Now, let me now speak like a person who is in the Western world. If I don't have enough information about you, if you don't speak my language, and when I say speak my language, I'm talking about the very simple things, like if you don't write the word favor, F-A-V-O-R, and F-A-V-O-U-R. It's a very silly, small thing. If you and I plan to have a meeting at 6 p.m. and you come at 6:05, if we have a plan to have a conversation and you come out not prepared, because you're a minister, you're coming to an investor, you're coming and you're sitting like this. I'm giving you a simple example. Are you going to walk away when they say, no, we don't want to do business with you, with the feeling that, oh, they are against us, they push us to the side? And yet there is another side to it. There is already business going on. There are already relationships going on. China presents the world with an efficient way to do business. Total factor productivity in China is off the hook. If you want to do a dress, you can get a dress done in 16 hours. While if you want a dress done in Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, or any of these countries, if you get it in 3 days, you will be very lucky. I'm exaggerating, but I'm very sure you get my point. The world wants to do business with Africa. Africa is the next frontier. It is the frontier. It is the only frontier. We will have the biggest number of laborers. Why aren't we doing it? In my opinion, there is no conspiracy. If we just do things the way the rest of the world does them, we will be lucky. What country attracts the largest amount of foreign direct investment from the United States? The Netherlands. Why? Because the Netherlands law, just like the law in the UK, closely resembles the law of the people in in the United States. But what is the law system in Uganda? It's a combination of both common and civil law, British law and European law. Uganda has very efficient dispute resolution mechanisms. In my opinion, we need to leverage those. We need to remind people that we are shareholders in the Africa Trade Insurance, which means if you lose your investment because of a civil unrest, you will get your investment back because Uganda is a member of the Africa Trade Insurance. Political risk insurance is a real thing. Credit insurance is a real thing. If we don't take advantage of these tools, of these trade facilitation tools, then it's not the fault of the investor. And lastly, we need to speak the language. I know I've said it before, but the information asymmetry is not because we can't speak the English. It's because we're speaking it differently from the way they want to receive it. Let me address Baker's overall question. Let me just address the overall question around easier or cheaper capital. I think that we have spent a significant amount of time trying to attract investment from perhaps the wrong quarters. We will probably go to Morgan Stanley or to JP Morgan Chase and say, oh, come and invest in our country. But those people might not really have familiarity with your country. Why don't you go to Google that has an interest in Africa? Why don't you go to Uber? These institutions have foundations. They will give you $100 million to put into your country, but you have to package. You have to understand what they want. Let me then come to Diane's question on information. The African Continental Free Trade Area, of which Uganda is a member, of which Uganda has deposited its instruments, AFCFTA, has made Africa home to the world's largest free trade area by sheer country size or sheer number of countries. 54 out of Africa's 55 countries is not a small number. The European Union has less than 30. The United States is only 50. The United States is 50 countries brought to one. So it's 50 states. Africa is 54 countries. The information is available at the AFCFTA Secretariat. COMESA has so much information. The East African Community has so much information. ECOWAS has so much information. But in my opinion, the real challenge is not at the information side. The real challenge is that it's very difficult or very expensive to get to Burundi, to get to Lumumbashi. It's very difficult to get to Tanzania for Ugandan business people. If it was cheaper to do this, the number of businesses would increase. Trade facilitation is a real thing. But again, it comes down to the government investing the money efficiently.
Okay. Wow.
That's
very powerful. And unfortunately, we have some few minutes of which I'll still want to have a wrap up. But I was on a talk show on TV on Monday with the executive director of Small Medium Enterprise, something like that. And when he was explaining the importance of these, the African Free Trade Agreement
area,
I realized that much as you'll say that we're building that bigger platform to make sure that we can have our goods pass through without all those tariffs and stuff, but I also realized that the borders that we have, the inability to let countries specialize in what they produce, because it's like you're creating a competition and you say, produce what you're good at. But you find Uganda saying, I'm good at coffee, I'm good at tea, I'm good at ABCD. But then Tanzania still also says that I have the same soil, and it also starts competing in the same. So you can see the competition that is bound to come from the 54 countries and actually lead into some complex, confused network. Yeah? Which I think that maybe we should be thinking that if we have made this bigger market, yes, let's get the advantage, the business advantage or the competitive advantage of a particular country. And we said, okay, you're good in this. Please, you specialize in this area. Then let's allow these other countries do this so that we can all utilize this bigger market. Otherwise, I see grasshoppers eating each other because the borders are open, but you are just competing amongst yourselves. And that's why you see the trade wars, the silent trade wars you are seeing among the countries, because you realize, hey, I've been spending so much money on milk. Can't we do the milk? Then you also start producing the milk. I think you see where I'm coming from.
I do, but let me just say this. If the market, if the cost of milk is as high as it is right now, and there are people who want to take Ugandan milk in Kenya, for crying out loud, let them take it. If there are people that want to take Ugandan sugar, let them take it. When I was living in Nairobi last year and the year before, I always bought Kakira sugar. I always bought Kibimba rice. I mean, it was Ugandan. I mean, it was right there. The point I'm trying to make is that there are significant opportunities for all these products and services because our markets are not fully developed yet. In other words, markets are open, or not open. Markets are available, customers are available because the producers in Kenya cannot satisfy their market 100%. That's the first thing. The second and most important thing, I want to give you a very simple example, and it's something around rules of origin. The Bahr el Ghazal region in South Sudan can grow some of the world's most amazing cotton. There's the River Nile, there's the fertile soils. Kenya has the region's most advanced textile sector. Uganda has Nitil, it has all these people that can process. Uganda has very many small opportunities. Rwanda is sitting there with the capacity to produce buttons or whatever, and Ethiopia is sitting there with its special economic zones. I'm just saying that if there was a functional road network between all these countries, it would be so much easier for us to have a functional conversation, because you'd be saying, okay, fine, why are you guys giving us a hard time? We can provide you with this and it's very cheap. But to be honest, it's very expensive to do business in the region because of the borders. What's very interesting is that the informal cross-border points are churning out more goods than some of the formal ones. If you go to some of the border posts in Busia, whatever, just outside the main border, people have made bicycles that can go through these things. They'll carry 1 ton bicycle. They will carry these things. I'm basically saying that we need to fix those aspects. But there is something that I would like to talk about, that I'm very passionate about, that I think that the African countries are yet, countries like Uganda are yet to take advantage of. AGOA is sitting there waiting to be plucked. The African Growth and Opportunities Act is a textiles heaven. If you wanted to employ 30,000 Ugandans in the next 6 months, you would go find somebody in the United States who is willing to take your apparel, textiles, go find them, ask them to invest in Uganda. It will not cost more than $10 million. Employ all these people, let them start stitching, churning out material and sending the material to the United States. But unfortunately, we have to talk about Uganda Airlines. Do they have a cargo facility that can take this material in a short period of time? We have to also ask, will the Kenyans be able to supply us with the textiles so we can stitch? Or do we have to go back to China and get this material? Of course, AGOA has something called the third country fabric provision, where you can get material from China import it into Uganda and stitch. But it comes down to the very simple things. Can our ministers speak to investors? Can the Uganda Investment Authority go and get people to come to Uganda? Can we provide them with additional space in the special economic zones? It's at that level. So my final message, in my opinion, is that we can create lots and lots of jobs, but we have to attract foreign direct investment. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dennis. Dr. Nora Odoi says, good information, thanks. Is this Odoi Naiboka? Okay.
Yes, that is her.
Okay. Becca Magunda, still on, says, one of the issues we face in Africa is lack of reliable books of accounts, and foreign investors need to trust our books. Strengthening reporting standards will help a great deal. Then we see.
While you're doing that, Evans, that is exactly my point. Baker is the CEO of a big firm in Nigeria. I can assure you that he understands this stuff. Opening your books accountability is so important. So important. Again, I'll say it. Power is nothing without control.
Okay. Then Edwin Biwabwire, he says, insightful presentation. Thanks for this session. Dafin Nyakatura still say Target has, oh, that's not clear. Target had AGOA products at some point. Okay. But I think we'll be able to go into that. Our time is up. So, Dennis, you had finished on your final point? Can you greet
Actually, that was my final point. Let me just reiterate what I would like to say. I would like to summarize my discussion into 5 things. The first and most important thing is that the person that you are at the age of 5, 6, 7 does not go away. If you set yourself up for whatever it is, you almost have to open yourself up for the influences. From the age of 5, it doesn't change. But there is something even more important. Just because you're 46, 47, 50 does not mean it's too late. There are too many positive influences available to help you. You just have to open your mind up for the information. In other words, be amenable. My second point is something that I have talked about over and over and over again. Uganda is the world's most entrepreneurial country. Our country has capacity to attract foreign direct investment, but accountability is so important. The country is actually going through a very positive evolution around corporate governance, around opening books, pure agency theory. We need to ensure that people can trust us with their money, and that the people that you grew up with, went to school with, people who can join your board, people who can join your governance team can keep you in check. It doesn't matter that you embezzled your own company resources. Open the books. People will forgive you. They will understand there is nothing wrong with you. You are not a thief. You're just dealing with very, very expensive capital, which is my third point. One of the things we need to remember is that the world is willing to do business, but we have to be open to attracting that amount of money. Once we bring that money home, bring that money to Africa, it will be much cheaper. But the market has to be driven by market forces, demand and supply. Once people, and Becca, this is the point that I also wanted to make, the market will determine the cost. I understand about all these things around credit research bureaus and whatever, but the market, if there is abundant amounts of money, there is a very big chance that supply and demand will make the difference.
Wow.
The fourth thing, foreign direct investment is very, very sensitive. It is sensitive not just to the thing you put your money into, but to the environment. It's not just your shop. It is the ditch around it, the potholes around it. It is the way you publicize your product. The last point. The future is Africa. The future is Africa. The future is Africa. Thank you.
Dennis, I think this has been a very fruitful presentation, and I want to thank you for sparing time. Back here, we're actually changing the way we are doing things. Like you may be aware that I've just taken on a new role as head of Africa in Business Life Global. And I think this came after the COVID, when I realized that we had so many challenges. We were complaining of thinking that the government would be the only alternative to our problems. And we're actually trying to think how we can do the small things that we can do. As we close off this session, I would like you to dig deep into your networks, which I know that you can do very well. We have, I think, Uganda, North America, something. Yeah? The association. We have this class of Black Americans. I think you can tap into this to be able to make sure that we can do coordinations through these networks. We can have these type of talks. We've just had, like from your presentation, and it has been able to throw light on so many things that would have thought, if they were spoken by a government official, we would say that, he or she was lying. But I think getting somebody externally or somebody who is exposed at that level is able to give a realistic view. So we thank you so much. I also want to thank all the listeners, the Namasagali Obis. I can see that they have been so much on the platform. I am told they are now making enrollments at the school. Please, if you want to get into secondary school, it's Namasagali. You can see Dennis here is an Obi from Namasagali. Maganda here, I'm an Obi from Namasagali. I think the school did a nice job. So please, they're making enrollments. If you want to take your children to secondary school, please don't look somewhere else. Dennis, thank you so much. I wish you well. Have a nice day.
Merry Christmas.
God bless. Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Bye-bye.